Archaeologists curious to find out the local history of an area can learn much from names of the places that would indicate the story from the past. And Athlone is a perfect example. The layout and structure of Athlone is defined by its strategic position as a principal crossing point on the Shannon, and its protection of that position down the centuries. First walled in 1251, the town has had numerous lines of defences built and destroyed and rebuilt again.
Turlough O'Connor built a castle in Athlone of some description, and subsequently the Normans built a castle at Athlone to guard the river crossing, and again the Elizabethans took an interest in Athlone, building a bridge and reoccupying the castle. Then again, Athlone features in the Confederate Wars in the mid-17th century, and of course it was besieged twice during the Jacobite War towards the end of the century.
But what is not immediately obvious is that the structure also reflects the direction of greatest danger. Athlone Castle sits on the west side of the town and protects assault from the east, making it the frontier zone protecting Connacht.
People like Turlough O'Connor are, very important rulers of large areas, and Turlough was raiding across the Shannon into the east of the country, and so he was anxious to have his crossing point guarded by a castle. By the time the Normans come, they're beginning to move into Connacht, and so they establish their castle on the west side of the river to guard the river crossing and to permit that expansion to take place. So it fluctuates in history between the Shannon as a great barrier, but either a barrier against the west or a barrier by the west against the east.
After many skirmishes that involved the burning of the town many times, then the takeover by one group then another, the dark days of the late 1600s is when Athlone becomes the centre of an English fight between James II and William, which involved the town being in the centre of a conflict between two vast armies several times in 1688.
In the Jacobite War, which sort of forms our thinking a lot on this, the Shannon was a great barrier that turned virtually the whole of Connacht into a fortress in 1690-91. Now, Athlone at the time was a fortified town. It had a stone wall and several bastions on the east side. It had an earthen wall on the west side. The Jacobites realised, however, that these fortifications were not strong, and although they made some improvements to the east wall fortifications, it was only as a holding operation to delay the Williamite advance, and the Williamites quickly broke into the east town, and the Jacobites fell back across the bridge, demolishing some temporary repairs that had been made to the arches, and then defied the Williamites from the main defence, which was along the river, and that consisted of the castle, the medieval castle, and earthworks all along the river facing east.
Just over a century later, it was now the perceived threats from the west, from a potential French invasion, that made the British start building new fortifications in the town.
The reaction of the British at the time was to build 8 gun batteries west of the town, and these were fairly substantial structures. Most of them have disappeared, and one of them now survives, No1 Gun Battery.
The Star, London, Thursday the 5th January 1804.
The line of fortifications on the Shannon extending from Athlone to Port Tumler is nearly completed. The works at Athlone consist of a considerable construction called Fort George of 5 battalions connected by curtains flanked by 3 enclosed redoubt. On the heights above Shannon Bridge is erected Fort Charlotte, supported by an enclosed redoubt and 2 strong batteries on the opposite sides of the river.
The principal fortifications were up on the high ground where the battery's housing development has taken place, and they projected well west to cover that high ground, which was seen as overlooking much of Athlone and as being potentially very dangerous to allow the enemy to occupy. But the enemy was likely to approach, they felt, on the Galway Road, and so those batteries covered the Galway Road. This battery, which is at the extreme north of the position, covers the Roscommon Road, and which is somewhat to the west of us from here. And it would also, the guns here would also achieve fire at the junction between the Roscommon Road and the Galway Road. It was not very heavily armed. It had 3 12-pounder cannon. 12-pounders so called because they fired a cannonball weighing in or around 12 pounds. And the batteries remained occupied by over 20 heavy cannon and a couple of howitzers until probably the 1860s or so. And by that stage, this sort of fortification and indeed that sort of gun was obsolete.
All the battery's sites would eventually fall into disuse, and in the late 1950s discussions appeared in the papers about clearing them away and building much needed housing. Unfortunately, when this was done, nothing much remained to remember them other than the names on the streets.
Well, I went to school in the Dean Kelly National School, which is often called the Batteries National School, and it looked out on the batteries. So the batteries was actually our playground. There was a little school playground, but our unofficial playground was the batteries. And we were facing a large hill with a kind of a stony, sandy, scree face on it, and up on top of that then were very substantial stone remains.
But the smallest one, called No1 Battery, was left untouched, and eventually work would begin in 2019 to uncover this small piece of Athlone's martial history. That work has now moved on to its second phase of opening up and uncovering what is there.
In the last year or so, we have cleared a lot of the heavy vegetation from the site, and then, courtesy of funding from the Heritage Council, we did a geophysical survey, which was a non-invasive technique just to see any of the detail below the ground for the wall behind the site. And then really kind of nicely, we got the opportunity, courtesy of the Community Monuments Fund, to do limited excavation on the site itself. So part of the remit for this excavation was, one, to do the excavation to see the condition of the walls, because when we know what the condition of the walls are, then we can apply to get further funding with the aim of conserving the monument and restoring it. So this stage is just expose it, see what it is, make sure it's safe, and then we go into the conservation stage and restoration stage proper. What we found, I suppose, first off in terms of structurally, was that an awful lot of the stone had been what we call robbed out. That was taken out, used for something. We don't know, there are speculations, I mean, I'm not going to go into it, but it was robbed, it was taken away. I just love, what I love about this wall is, one, it's in fantastic condition. It's really well bonded in places. What I love is you can literally see, you can trace there between the vegetation. So if I was here a week ago before we started, I'd have been standing up at this level. So you can see the amount of fill that's come out. An awful lot of material has come out away from it. It's quite a slow process, but there's a nice big ramp coming up to the side now. And the most important thing, and I think it's really nice, is that we haven't drawn any material away. It's not just the commercial expense, but it's also that there will still be bits of ceramic, bits of glassware in that. And our hope is that we have potential then to maybe kind of do small little civic exercises, get people and families involved when hopefully the whole COVID situation is relaxed a little bit more, that then we can kind of build up more of the community outreach side of this project.
Historically, Athlone was always a strategic point on the Shannon, but is that still true today? Who better to ask than the expert from the nearby Costume Barracks, Lieutenant Colonel Dennis Hanley, the officer commanding the 2nd Artillery.
It's just technology has improved, but the tactics haven't really. And key terrain is still key terrain. So when you look around a place like Athlone, or you look around anywhere in Europe, where are the castles, where are the ruins? They're sitting on the key or decisive terrain. They're sitting on the places that control access points. They control and overwatch bridges, roads, strategic towns, etc. So actually, from a terrain analysis point of view, it hasn't really changed. Now, to a degree, mobility and speed and air power has changed things as well. But key terrain is still key terrain, you know, and people still try to take capital cities, bridges, rivers and all of that. So some things haven't changed. It's all original stuff, yeah.
Dennis had not seen the recent excavations on the No. 1 Battery at all, despite running past it regularly.
So much in it still, isn't there?
What is the use of such renovation of the No. 1 Battery to the people of Athlone? Is it important?
Well, first, I'm a bit biased because I'm a history graduate anyway. As are a lot of people in the military, we're very much into our history, and I think we always have to learn the lessons of the past in order that we can understand the future. All sides of our history. It's contested and it's difficult, but it's very, very important, and I think it's really, really important for us to know that. And to see places like this, I think they're crucial.
But they survived here and were in use up until the 1860s. And they have given us 2 place names here in Athlone. The Batteries, which is an area of high density housing now, takes its name from the batteries, of course. And this area, No. 1, where we're standing, which is a little peninsula between the canal and the river, takes its name from the No. 1 Battery. A lot of people know this area well as No. 1, but don't actually know why it is No. 1.
I am absolutely bowled over by the tremendous work that has been done here in No. 1 Battery. It's the only survivor. It's a great tragedy that the rest of the fortifications were allowed to decay. So it's tremendous that 1 battery has survived, and it's tremendous that it's we hope going to be, you know, presented as and possible to visit and so on. And there's some hope of having 3 replica guns in it as well.
There are very substantial other Napoleonic fortifications, of course, on the Shannon, at Shannon Bridge and place, but at least we still have 1 battery here, and it's something that I think we should be fairly proud of.